How's it going, everybody? Messing with the background a little bit, not working out. That's what happens. Welcome to Careers in Sight. My name is Derek Calvert. I am the program manager with the Montana Educational Talent Search program. And if you're watching today, you're probably here to hear some interesting information and tidbits, and just to get some extra facts about the engineering career field. So we got 20 minutes of your time. We won't take any longer than that. Without further ado, we have an awesome guest here in Dr. Chelsea Heverin, engineering professor at Montana State University. Would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I work at Montana State University in Bozeman, and here I teach engineering classes, but I also run a research lab. And so we try to understand the origins of bone fragility and aging, which some of you might think like, is that engineering? And it is. We break bones and we measure how tough they are. And then we use biology with the engineering to understand why those changes happen. And we also engineer building materials that are totally different than how we make conventional building materials. So we like to use microbes, so bacteria and fungi, to help us build building materials.
Wow. I'm going to be completely honest. I had no idea that was even a thing. So I am excited to learn some more. This is going to be really interesting. Well, we're just so grateful that you can join us today. And, feel free, any viewers, if you're watching, comment with any questions, and if you're interested in engineering and interested in what Dr. Chelsea has to say, please let us know, and we can, we will get those answered for you. So without further ado, we have a few questions here to ask. And so our first question is, what does a typical day look like for you?
So as a professor at a university during the academic year, I wear several hats. So one is running my research lab, and one is teaching classes. And another altogether is really advising students. And so what today looked like, for example, is this morning I started with research meetings, and we got to think about how we can make more sustainable building materials. Then I had a research lab meeting, and I worked with my students on understanding our recent results. Then I went and taught my class, and I also had office hours for that class. And then right before this session, I was working with some graduate students who are writing applications for a fellowship program, and we were working together on how to effectively write those applications. So a little bit of everything going on today. But one thing that I like so much about this job is that it always keeps me on my toes. I am never, ever bored. No 2 days have ever been the same.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it does sound like you have a lot. I know you mentioned that you had a busy day, so that explains what made it so busy.
Yeah.
And so I guess what was the main factor when it came to choosing this career field for you?
So if I mean engineering, so I can answer that two ways. What really brought me into engineering was being so curious of how things work. And what's common between, let's say, bone research and bio-inspired building materials research is that I get to think about how biology works and use it in engineering. And so I loved that there's so much space in engineering research for creativity and to be really interested all the time in how things work, and then to use that information to help design. So I love that. But one other thing too is that I'm not an engineer working at a company. I'm an engineer working at a university and running a lab. And what made me really want to do that specifically is the teaching that I get to do and the mentorship that I get to enjoy. So I really love working with students, whether I'm teaching them in a classroom or mentoring them and teaching them how to do research.
Wow. So if you were to, look at the students and, talk to them and to see if they're interested in engineering.
Yeah.
It would kind of, or would you say that it comes down to, them having an interest in how things work, or is that's kind of one factor among many?
It's definitely a bunch of factors, but the key thing that I'd impart is that you might like engineering if you want to solve big problems. Notice I'm not going to say great at math or physics. That's actually, you don't have to be great at math or physics. You'll have to work hard in those spaces, but what you have to be to be an engineer is have grit and motivation and work hard to solve big problems. And oftentimes engineers who do really, really well are highly creative, right? They're creative, they're out of the box thinkers about these big problems. They also tend to be really driven people. And so whether you're driven to make an impact in, let's say, more sustainable building materials, or in renewable energies, or in healthcare, or whatever else it is, engineering provides a great set of tools to tackle those problems, but it tends to attract those individuals who want to solve the problems and be involved in that.
Yeah, and I love that that you're talking about all these different ways of engineering. I think it's probably easy. I speak, for myself at least, but I imagine others can feel like, oh, engineering, that just must mean, somebody doing some engineering work, either in a factory or something like that. But it's really, I'm super intrigued to find out the biological engineering and things like that.
Definitely. So, well, I mean, if it's okay to talk a little bit about my path into this, I wasn't an engineer for my first career, actually. And I'm from a small town, like probably many Montana students are from. I'm from a small town in Oregon. And quite honestly, when I was in high school, I did not think I wanted to be an engineer. I thought engineers worked on cars and bridges, and those are not my thing. They're fine, but they don't move me really, right? And so it was later, actually, after I'd went to college the first time, when I was working at a hospital, when I realized that I wanted to be a biomedical engineer or something like it. I am now a mechanical engineer, but that's kind of what the transition point was, where I saw biomedical engineers making an incredible difference in the care that patients received, because they had dreamed up these really amazing alternatives that could, that could, for example, mean that someone's cartilage defect could be healed, and maybe they could have a higher quality of life and get back to the sports and activities that they cared about, right? And that wasn't just the doctors and the surgeons that were providing that to the patient. It was the engineers who had dreamed it up, right? Who had come up with these tissue engineered scaffolds, et cetera. And so that for me was this real call of saying, okay, engineering can really come up with new solutions that don't exist, right? But I really resonate with that sentiment of not everyone knows all the things that an engineer can be. And just because you haven't met an engineer who is passionate about the thing you are yet, doesn't mean that you can't use engineering to help solve those problems.
Yeah. Wow. I'm just kind of thinking about some different engineering, solving problems, all the different things that you can do, and I'm just trying to. I'm curious, because I imagine there's probably an endless amount of things to do.
Gosh. I mean, I can offer a few examples just based on people I work with and really close friends, but just because some listeners might be like, oh yeah, that's the thing I care about, right? So, starting with what we were just talking about, okay, engineering an organ or tissue to help solve a medical problem. Okay, that's engineering. Okay, engineering a solar panel that's more efficient, that can help us have more renewable energy. That's engineering. Okay, engineering a new carbon fiber composite that makes you make the coolest mountain bike that's ever existed. That's engineering. So on and so forth. There's so many great challenges, whether it's about, let's say, vehicles for space flight, whether it's about monitoring water quality, maybe that's what you really care about, right? In some communities, water quality is really compromised. Well, an environmental engineer would want to work on those problems. Just across the board, if there's a problem in society, probably there's a flavor of engineering that is oriented towards helping solve it.
Yeah. So I feel like this could probably go for anyone who has an interest. You mentioned mountain bikes, or an interest in helping other people. There's probably so many different areas. So it's not just a career field for for somebody who wants to build bridges, or
Yeah,
work on cars
not at
or things
all.
like that.
It's
That's really
really
awesome.
it's really inclusive. It's for everybody. And increasingly we have more increasingly engineering is becoming more diverse too, in terms of women participating, in terms of minority communities participating, and that's so important in engineering too.
And I imagine I mean, I can hear it in your voice that you really enjoy what you do. Uh,
Mhm.
so with our next question, I guess what is the most or one of the most enjoyable parts of your job?
Um, so that's a tie. So one would be when something really clicks in a classroom and you see it and their face lights up, that's really great. The other part is that remember that, my lab does research. We're trying to we're trying to ask questions and see, see what the answer is. And sometimes we find out something amazing. And there's this little period of time where you've found something out. And then you're going to share it with the world. But there's this little period of time where maybe you or your students working together realize that you've discovered something, right? And it just feels like this amazing moment.
Hmm. Yeah, it sounds like kind of what you were talking about before when you solving problems, figuring out how to make things work. That's kind of the end goal. And when you do it, it feels accomplishing. You feel like you're successful with it.
Yeah, it does. It feels successful, but also maybe you found out a little piece of how the world works that you didn't know before.
I like that.
Yeah.
And so I guess on the other side of things, what would you say is the most difficult part of your job?
Well, sometimes things don't work, right? An experiment might not work. You might have to do it again. Sometimes things break. I've had lab equipment break. That can be hard, right? So, or sometimes the hours can be long in my job anyway. A lot of engineers in industry have pretty reasonable hours. Oftentimes I do, but sometimes I work really long days. Especially if it's the middle of the semester and I'm teaching a class and maybe we have something coming up like a conference where we're trying to assemble all of our research results. So this week's kind of a long week, putting in some pretty long days. So that can be hard too.
Yeah, it sounds like, so I know like a lot of other careers in different fields, they can have pretty what's the word I'm looking for? Days can be, I mean, not constantly the same, but they have similar problems each day. And that in engineering, it sounds like as well, there's different problems that can happen depending on the day, depending on on what happens, on how things working. If something breaks, just like you mentioned, and then depending on the job, the amount of hours that you're working.
Yeah. That's all
Well,
challenging. But that's okay.
yeah, and in every job, every career has a challenge. And it really comes down to what's the pros and the cons.
Mhm.
And do your interests run in line with what the job is doing? And
Yeah.
so
And if
with that,
it's personally satisfying, right?
yeah, yeah. And then do you have any advice for high school students specifically that are looking into this career field? Anything that you would say to them?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Let's see. So a few pieces of advice. Again, creativity and drive and passion mean that you're going to make a great engineer. And that's it. Everything else you can work really hard and get along the way. So if you're feeling like, I don't know, I go to a small school and maybe we don't have as much math there, you can catch up. If you work hard, you can catch up. Okay. I promise you, that was literally my situation. You can. Also, it's when you get to college, use your resources. We have wonderful programs at MSU and other places that help encourage success. And so you can use resources on campus to help make sure that your first year as an engineering student that you do really well. Sometimes that's working with other students in study groups. Sometimes it's, again, using kind of academic resources available through these schools, but there's so many resources available for you to succeed, right? So that's one really big thing. Otherwise, a piece of advice here is to really spend some time, maybe write it down, maybe talk to others and think about, what are you really passionate about? What do you want to work on? What drives you? What would you like to make an impact on? And let that guide the directions you want to take your career in, as opposed to, oh, I'm scared of this subject, or I really like this subject right now, right? So if you're kind of driven by how you want to contribute and what you want to be doing, you could start thinking, okay, well, that's where I want to get. Now, how do I get there?
I think that's some very sound advice, and I imagine too that if we have any viewers that are watching right now, or if you're catching the replay of this, that you're searching, you're looking for a specific career, and I think engineering is a incredibly great career field. It's super diverse. You can follow your passions,
yes.
And I really appreciate what you said too, in terms of really having that drive. And I think of like the hustle, the vision to stay true, to work hard, to do whatever you can, and really, I mean, to be able to do that, you'll accomplish a lot of things in this, in finding your career, or if you're pursuing engineering, for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, so it doesn't look like we have any comments, but like I said, if you're watching this on replay, you can comment, you can send me an email, feel free to reach out. I will try to get those questions answered. I will reach out personally to get those questions answered for you. But once again, we're super grateful. Thank you for joining us today. And that'll be it. That's the end of our show.
Well, thanks for talking with me. This was really fun, and I hope that I meet some of you all in the engineering program here. A little plug for mechanical engineering. It's so diverse and so great, but any of our engineering programs.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. See you guys.
Thank you.